Hey, welcome. This is Leah Bales with the Soul Big Life Show. Today, I'm delighted to have a very special guest, my friend Lesli Doares, who is a marriage coach for men and couples consultant and author of the upcoming book, Hero Husband, Building a Super Marriage with Truth, Confidence, and Authentic Leadership. Hey, Lesli, welcome.
Hey there.
So Lesli brings over 20 years of experience working with individuals and couples, along with her personal experience in a nearly 40-year relationship with her husband. And she creates a paradigm shift in marriage, so marriage can become a space where both partners feel respected and included. Lesli doesn't believe that miserable should ever be included in the same sentence as marriage. I love that. If your marriage isn't working for both of you, it isn't working. So welcome, Lesli. So glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I have to say it to you all. Lesli and I met at a conference in, was it San Jose, San Diego?
San Francisco, somewhere. It's Northern California, San Francisco, yeah.
Warm California. We met years ago and really very quickly in the workshop found each other, and a couple of other women we really connected with and stayed connected in a mastermind for years after that program ended. And I've always really admired Lesli's work and been interested in the unique way that she approaches relationships. So really happy today to be able to talk to you, Lesli, about your new book and your new project. I'm just very excited about it. It's going to really do a lot of good for the world, I know.
That's my intent.
So tell us, I know for years you were a marriage therapist, family therapist. Tell us the difference between marriage therapy and the coaching and consulting that you're doing now.
Well, that's a really interesting question. And a lot of it has to do with not necessarily so much what actually is happening, but the way people view it. A lot of people look at marriage counseling, therapy as punitive. Something is wrong, something is bad. We have to go see this professional and fix it. And coaching is more based on this is just a normal thing that pretty much every couples go through. Nobody's bad. Nobody's, there's no illness. It's just, this is just a natural part of life that people think, relationships are natural, and up to a point they are, but people run into very common challenges, and they're not broken. They just need some guidance to move forward. So I kind of work, the people that I work with are just normal, everyday people, nothing, they're going through their lives. They might have kids, they're trying to figure out this balance. They may have lost touch. Maybe they're having some difficulty communicating, which is pretty much, which is normal. They're having disagreements, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's just kind of like, you go to a coach to take a look, because I have experience. I can look at what's going on and go, oh, did you know you were doing such and such and so and so? And they go, oh no, right? It's like if you going to a golf pro or to fix your golf swing, right? Yeah. You can still play the game. You just want to play it better.
And in fact, a lot of the best players, the best athletes have coaches, because that's what makes it from good to fabulous. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah. What are some things, Lesli, that we often believe about relationships that may actually get in the way of having a successful marriage?
Oh, where would you like me to start? There are a bunch of them. And it was interesting because I was talking with somebody, when a client yesterday, and one of the things that they think, or that he was mentioning, was that marriage is about your personal happiness. Mm-hmm. And that can run us into trouble, because first off, happiness is both a choice and fleeting. Nobody can be happy all the time. Otherwise, that just becomes your new baseline, right? And so when we focus on happiness, then we have this difference of, I want to do this thing and this thing will make me happy, but it's creating problems in this relationship that I and involved with. So
And
that's
then it's sort of
one.
like the other person is just the one getting in the way of your happiness, right?
Right. Yeah. And so if, the other thing is that, I actually said this to somebody, and to me, it was of course, this is the way it is, but they looked at me like, I never heard that before. In that you and your partner are two different people, always have been, always will be. That is not a problem. It's only, how do we work through it? How do we build something that's bigger than both of us, but both of us feel good in? That's the whole thing, right? And so, when we we're going to disagree. Any two people, I don't care how much you love each other, I don't care. You are going to disagree about something.
Maybe lots of things. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong, right?
No, it just means, oh, I have this experience, you have this other experience. Where do we want to go with this? And John Gottman, who's big in the relationship marriage field, talks about that. And believe me, he does statistics. He says 2/3 of all disagreements can go unresolved. The key is to figure out.
I mean, 2/3 of all disagreements can go unresolved, meaning they often do, or it's just easy to let them, or
no. Literally, it's okay for them to not be resolved.
I get what you mean.
Truly is okay, right?
Okay. So not every disagreement needs to be something that you work through and process and figure out.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but we get caught up in this. It's like, no, it's like, no, it's really okay. You do it your way, I do it mine, we're good, right? But it's that other, knowing what the third of the 33% that you actually need to resolve. And then
do you have some guidelines for that? Like how do we know what the ones are that should be resolved? What would you say about that?
Well, it's interesting. I think a lot of it has to do with how bothered, or how, what the emotional feeling is around it, right? If there's something going on that truly is bothering me, right? So for instance, and I do this all the time, my husband has this wonderful little habit of sometimes, not always, leaving a little bit of coffee in the bottom of his coffee cup. Now, I never do that. I always finish my coffee. And so and the coffee cups look exactly the same. So when I go to put them in the dishwasher, if I'm using his, it's like coffee goes everywhere. And I just go, and I grab the sponge, right? It doesn't bother me. I don't get upset about it. It's just something I let go. But there might be something else that is happening that, no, this is really bothering me, right? This is, I keep running into this. Those are the kinds of things that we need to talk about. And of course, there are the big ones. Do we have children? We kind of have to be both on board with that. Do we want to move? Okay, so there are some things that we do need to resolve, but it's not everything.
That's a really good reminder. And I've kind of noticed with myself and other people that if we don't deal with the 1/3 big things, the little things really seem like a much bigger deal. And then we're like, every little thing is a problem. Do you notice that?
Right. And sometimes the little things are actually a symptom of something larger. That makes sense. Yeah. Now, and then what you're saying is that sometimes if there is distress in our relationship, any little thing is just going to be added to that, right? Because there is a tendency to neglect to look at the big picture and see the positives. Negatives are very, very powerful. And so when we start focusing, or when we have a belief, right, then I'm going to find stuff that will support that belief. So if I think our relationship is in trouble, I'm going to find things to support that. Now, it may actually be, but we sometimes forget that, not everything is doom and gloom. We're not paying attention to this other thing over here that my partner is doing that actually makes me feel good.
So do you have ways that you help people change their brains to look for some of the good things as part of the process?
Absolutely. One of the things is to identify every day 3 things that either, actions that your partner took, something that your partner did to make you feel good, and you actually write it down, and then you share it with them. You tell them, hey, thank you for making dinner, or hey, you did a great job, with the kids, or whatever it might be, where you are actually focusing on on paying attention to the positive that your partner is doing.
I think that is so huge. And I think I'd like to just pause there a minute. So everyone listening, whether you're in a really super happy marriage, whether it's a challenging marriage, whether it's like most of ours, a mix of things, or even if you're not married, you're in relationship with people. So thinking of that as a takeaway, 3 things a day, and you write them down and you say, in whatever way is right, thank you. I appreciate the way you did that, or thank you, or whatever that is. I read once years ago that the number one reason people leave both their jobs and their marriages is they don't feel appreciated.
Yep.
And so this is something that, and it doesn't mean, I think sometimes I'll talk to people and they're like, well, if I'm looking at the good things, the bad things we're not ever going to get to, it's like I'm being false. It's not, I know you're not saying, and I never would either, let's ignore the things that are a problem. And at the same time, not forgetting about what's good, because that part of our brain, that reticular activating system, only looks for what we tell it to look for. And so it will find it. So look, I think that's really good. I hope everyone, all of us, take that as a takeaway from this. Yeah, really powerful. Yep. So you mentioned that there are signs. Not only are we going to look for what's good, we're also going to notice what are the signs that people should look out for as signs of trouble, something in the marriage that really does need to be dealt with.
Well, and again, I go back to, how do I feel? Now, as I said before, it's not about happiness, right, per se. But if there is something that I'm finding stressful, something that is making me uncomfortable, that's always a sign to go, okay, let's stop and take a look at what's going on. And this is something that we're not really very good at doing, right? And the other thing that we have to do is, when we identify that there is a challenging spot in our relationship, the first thing that most people do is focus on their partner.
Blaming.
When actually the best thing is to, what am I bringing to the table? What have I learned to do? How am I reacting, bringing this up, dealing with this? Because the person that we have 100% control over is ourselves. And so if I, and by the way, this is something that people need to know. You can alter your relationship without your partner ever participating. That if I start doing something different, my partner can't do the same thing. Now they'll try, right? But if I suddenly start bringing subjects up in a more pleasant, more inviting way, my partner is going to respond to that, versus if I bring them up in a blaming, confrontational way, you're going to have a completely different interaction with your partner.
Which is super refreshing in itself, because I was talking to a client the other day, and we were talking about how daily, there's the same argument with his spouse, and that he's not alone. Lots and lots of us have this. It's like the same argument over and over. It might have a little different flavor or content, but often the same thing. So what you're talking about is like breaking that cycle. Like if 2 people tend to escalate, even if one person shifts, then it makes that a big difference. I love that.
Yeah, because one of the things that I say is, you can be angry by yourself. You cannot fight by yourself. You have to have a willing partner. So if you and your partner are having these same arguments, fights over and over again, what's your part in it? How are you contributing to that escalation? And what would be, and this is what coaching is. This is what we do, is we go through and say, okay, here's the pattern, try this.
Mm-hmm. And this is why Lesli is so good at what she does. I don't like to do it. It's not my area to do relationship coaching. I've done a little bit of it, and I now refer people to Lesli. And
very appreciative.
And that when we get, and here's, I think, so important, and you said this earlier, having relationships is natural and normal. Knowing how to get out of the stuck spots is not very few of us know how to do that. I don't. We need support and help to be able to see a different picture and to find a different way. So I think very few people can get out of those cycles all by themselves. And the kind of coaching Lesli does is one great way of accessing that. And she's going to tell us toward the end, like how we can connect with her more for doing that or her other work. So well, Lesli, you go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and I wanted to comment on that because, marriage is a very specific, very special kind of relationship. It combines every other type of relationship we're in all into one. And the truth of the matter is every romantic relationship we've been in before this one has ended. So what are we going to do differently to keep this one going?
And to keep this one going without miserableness.
Yes, absolutely. Get rid of that word. No.
Yeah, right. It's one thing. A lot of people can stay in a marriage a long, long time. Stay in a marriage and let it be fulfilling and growthful for both people. That's the wonderful challenge that we have. Yeah. So Lesli, your two current projects both focus on men, the Hero Husband Project and your upcoming book, The Hero Husband, Building a Super Marriage with Truth, Confidence, and Authentic Leadership. Both of them focus on men. Tell us why that is.
Well, we have been trying to break some of the boxes that people have been put in. And I do believe that the women's movement freed women in some ways, but in other words, just, but freed us to be our complete selves, that we didn't just have to be the, at home housewives, mothers kind of thing, traditional roles that for many years women were placed in. Now, the problem is that men have not been freed in the same way. And so, so helping them become the partners that most of them want to be. My personal belief is that most guys are good guys who love their wives, love their families, want it to work. They just don't necessarily know how to do that in a way that feels authentic to them, right? And so, one of the things that gets me just fingernails on the blackboard is the happy wife, happy life, just say yes, dear kind of thing. I'm more of happy spouse, happy house. Both people it has to work for both people. And so helping men understand, here's all the options that you have. Because like I said, going back to the happiness, that's when I talk to my men clients, most of them, I say, what is the one thing you want? And they say, I want my wife to be happy. Great, wonderful. Go to number two, because that's not, you can add or detract from her happiness, but ultimately she decides whether or not she's going to be happy. Yeah. And so what they try to do is a lot of things to make their wives happy, but they're always like one step behind, because there is no mind reading school of marriage. Sorry, it doesn't exist.
No, you can't teach us to do that.
No, wish I could, but I could teach you to come really close, right? Because our partners will tell us a lot of things about themselves, but sometimes it's almost like they're speaking a different language. I don't fully understand what that means. And so what I'm trying to do is I jokingly call myself the wife whisperer, that I translate wife. Here's what she's actually asking for. Here's what she really wants. And
how does that work? Then do you have them go kind of check that out with the wives? Like, oh, Is this, or what, how does that work? That's fascinating to me.
Usually what I will do is I will help them in how to approach, what to pay attention to, how to talk to them. But it's giving them very specific tools about here's, and one of the things that I actually do is I actually have them do a values assessment. What are your values and are you living them?
For themselves, right? Their
right,
own values.
right. And how are they showing up in your relationship? And what gets in the way? Because one of the things is and a lot of women don't know this, but men are paralyzed by women's tears. They don't know what to do with them. And it's not that, because they feel they want their partners to feel good. And if their partner is upset or crying, they know their partner doesn't feel good. And then they feel like they failed. And this is why men want to fix things, right?
And then for some men, that leads to anger. Right.
Exactly.
And which doesn't feel like it's in the caring way that it actually is.
Right. And, and so part of this is just helping it's actually to help both partners. But I do think that women have a lot of support. And I don't think that men have as much support.
And that's what I've noticed with you is, you're great working with women too. And you realize there aren't many people listening to men in the way that they need to be listened to and helping them find the way to find what they need, as well as connect with what their partners need. And I love that you're using, taking that angle and opening to that area, because not many people are doing it.
Right. And what makes me different is that there are men who do this, but they're missing, because they're not women. They I can actually really relate because I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, the whole 9 yards. And you just to help people understand, help guys understand, we can't approach each other in exactly the same way. One of the things that men don't understand is that it's changing, but a lot of women are not direct in what they want. And guys are like, well, why didn't you just say you wanted to do this? It's like, well, you don't understand, that convoluted way, when your wife says, hey, would you be interested in going to blah, blah, blah? Men think that's a real yes or no question.
Like, no, I don't want to go.
Right. They think no is a legitimate answer. They don't understand that their wife is saying, I would like to do this.
Right. So in that way, I'm sure there's learning on both sides. It's like, women, we get to learn to be more direct and more clear with what we really want, not expect someone else to guess it for us. And when we fall back into that, how great for a man with a woman who does that to realize what really is underneath it.
Right. Yeah. To be able to say, so am I hearing that you'd really like to go to this thing? Right. Yeah. And it's just a slightly different way. And a lot of it has to do with how we've been socialized and what we expect. And, we're products of our past. No, we can't do what we don't know. And that's partially what I try to help people with. I jokingly say nobody has to take a relationship 101 class, and I think everybody should.
Yes. Oh my gosh. 101, and then keep going with all that we can.
Yep.
And I think you've mentioned this a few times, but I think it's so important to remember. It seems like for most of us, there's a part of us that thinks we should just know how to do this. I love this person. We have a lot. I should know how to do this. And there's something wrong with this if we don't. And marriage, I think marriage is the most challenging relationship, really, and we ask a lot of it. We expect a lot of modern marriages, and they can be wonderful and amazing. And none of us are born knowing how to do that. So I think what you're doing is so great with that. Lesli, what would you say is your big why? Why do you really do this work?
Well, that's really interesting. My big why really isn't necessarily about the couples, although I am very, I I think that if people want to be married, that's great. I don't think everybody should be. I'm not that. But if you want to be married, I think people need to understand what it is, what it isn't, and how to do it well. Because my real why isn't about the couple, it's about their children.
Oh, wow. Say more about that.
It's really about the legacy. I'm a child of divorce. Early in my career, I worked with this little girl who, she was 5 when she came to me. And she had anxiety. Well, of course she did, because she had been the rope in her divorced parents' tug of war since she was 2.
Mm.
Now, the problem was I could not give this child any tools. She's 5, right? And so I kept thinking, I need to get in earlier, because there's a lot, divorce is very disruptive to everybody. And it can be particularly disruptive to children because they don't understand. And, and because if you don't have a child, if you and your partner split, you never have to see them again. But if you have a child, you actually can never really be divorced. You are still connected to that other person. And so how do you want to proceed, right? And so it's really, that's really my big why. And the other big why is it's very heartbreaking to me when I get a phone call from a man, and this happens more often than I like, and he's calling me in an absolute panic because his wife has just asked him for a divorce and he didn't know it was coming. And at that point in time, he's like, I'll do anything. And I'm going, now on occasion, when it reaches that stage, we can get it back together again. But usually when it gets to the point where the woman has asked for a divorce, she's done. And there's, so my goal is don't let that happen, right? Let's figure out what needs to happen so that it's not this mass panic.
Wow, I love that. So you're avoiding both the horrible pain of someone being blindsided, not, thinking everything's okay and suddenly facing a divorce, as well as helping who knows how many little children not have to go through that pain.
Right.
And even if they do, even if people do get a divorce, I think what you're helping them with, knowing they're always going to be in relationship if they have children, knowing what you're helping them with can help the rest of their lives and the rest of their children's lives be dramatically different than having a, whatever we want to call it, unconscious, terrible divorce. So.
Right. And this is the same thing about, because a lot of people will stay in a marriage, but the children will still pick up, and there's, because we're teaching kids, this is what a relationship looks like.
Right.
They're learning by osmosis.
So whether people, so go ahead. Sorry, Leslie.
It's okay. But, and so it's what kind of model do we want to set for them? Now, and as I said, not all marriages can or should be saved, but a much greater proportion can be than are.
And even in the ones that are not going to stay married, what you are talking about can make, for the men and the women, make a tremendous difference. So
yep.
Yes, I love that this really is your legacy work because of that. Beautiful. So let's just stop, and I'm going to ask you to tell us how to connect with you and give us your site and what you've got going. And then also we'll pause after that for just a moment of any last words that you have for us. So first of all, how can we connect with you and your great work?
Well, I actually have 2 websites, but the one that really relates to men, it's actually called theherohusbandproject.com.
Hero Husband Project.
The Hero Husband Project.
HeroHusbandProject.com. Good.
Right. And so that's one way. And then they can always send me an email, Lesli, Lesli, no E, thank you, Mom, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. That's the and that's my other website. But I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find
Great.
me.
We'll put those links here in this, in below. Great. So Lesli, it's been so wonderful. I've learned a lot. I know people listening have learned a lot. Thank you so much. Let's just take a moment and notice if there's any last thought, words of wisdom, just a last little nugget you'd like to give people.
I think the last thing is that if you find yourself having questions, or if you find yourself wondering, reach out, right? The earlier you do it, the faster things can get back on track. And, as I said before, marriage isn't necessarily about your personal happiness, but you should feel good in it. You should feel like it's a good place to be, like you're loved and you're cared for, and you love and care for this other person. And there's stuff that's going to get in the way, but you want that to be external stuff that the two of you deal with together, not internal to your relationship. And if you find yourself, it's like we all do. We all run into it's like, I remember when my kids were little, it's like if I had a question, I talked to my sister, or I talked to my friend about, well, how did you get the child to sleep, or whatever. We don't do that with our marriages. And I think it's really important to find somebody that you can have a real conversation, not going to where they're going, that your partner's a horrible person, just leave them, right? But somebody who's going to go, no, this is, you've got something going here. Let's see what we can do to make it better and keep it going.
Yes. So that even the little problems early on can be great indicators to make things even better. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean there's a problem. You haven't failed. By taking that indication of things that are a little off and then deciding to do something about that. Connect with Lesli, connect with someone to help get perspective and do better and make your marriage truly fabulous. So you each can be heroes. You can have hero husband, hero wife, hero marriage.
Yep.
Yes.
Love
fabulous. So thank you so much, Lesli. And thank you for being here and being with us. This is Leah Bales with The Soul Big Life. Thank you so much.